Record. Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate your interest, and I look forward to the next few minutes, just sort of talking through how to strengthen your graduate school application for economics. But really, these ideas could apply to almost any discipline. Please feel free when you have questions, if you have questions, to just put them into the chat. I am monitoring that, and I can probably respond as we move through. I will also, and so we'll try to remember to do this more than once. For those of you who are here, there's now a link to the slides that you can reach on Dropbox. I believe that is open, so where you can see the file. And so I appreciate yeah, everyone's interest. So I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you. Oh, I was going to say we had people sign up from, I was excited, Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, Tennessee, Azerbaijan, Ghana, Lesotho, Nigeria, and South Africa. And so I'm sure there will be people coming in and out during the hour. And so I'll try to remember to post the link to the slides again. And so if you're here, I'm just going to assume that you are interested in graduate study and economics, or just in general, but economics in particular. My name is Jay Walker. I am Associate Professor of Economics and the Program Director for the Master's Program in Economics here at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, which is where I am today talking to you. And so I'll talk a little bit about the process of applying, what you can do to strengthen your application, and sort of like a longer term strategy in that, and to talk about the differences between a master's degree and a PhD in economics, why you might want one versus the other. And so just to sort of, state it explicitly, why would you consider an MA before a PhD? And so some students go directly into a PhD program following their undergraduate degree. And so it is possible. I think it is more possible if you have certain background, if you are stronger in mathematics, if you have had a little bit more research experience, that's possible. But why an MA? And so it can help you to sort of explore research interests and think about if a PhD is really the way that you want to go. And so a master's degree is normally 1 to 2 years. A PhD can last somewhere between 4 to 6, 5 to 7 years. And so there's a significant difference in the amount of time that you are allocating. And so it's a way to see, like, am I really interested, right? And so even if you don't want to go on to a PhD, and so I'll jump down, but come back up, you can see here where it says expand, a master's degree in economics expands your career options. So this helps you to qualify for research, policy, or private sector roles, but the PhD is really an optional thing. And so if you're interested, you can continue on. If you're not, you still can you can get a pretty good job coming out with a master's degree in economics. Coming in, we're going into the master's. It allows you to strengthen academics. It's something that if you want to, you can focus on math preparation. If your GPA was not as high as you would hope, right? As an undergraduate, MA programs often will let students in with lower GPAs than what PhD programs were. And this allows you to build a stronger PhD application, right? So you can gain research experience. You're completing a thesis or a project, which talks about research potential. So you can talk from a position of knowledge about, well, I can finish a dissertation for a PhD. I've already completed a thesis or a project that was similar, right? And also according to what kind of student you were as an undergraduate, but if you come in as a master's and you're thinking about PhD, you can work on securing stronger letters of recommendation. It's a different environment in a master's degree. And so, as I mentioned before, please feel free if you have questions as we move along to sort of put them into the chat. So what do graduate programs look for? And so as you're thinking about, well, my application for the spring, for the coming academic year, 1 year from now, what do graduate programs look for should affect how you are trying to prepare for that process. And right, so academic preparation. And so, frankly, graduate programs in economics anticipate more mathematical and statistical background and economics coursework. And I'll eventually speak specifically about this, but they look and see what kind of classes you've had, what kind of math and statistical coursework you've had. Do students or do you have research experience? Like what did the letter of recommendation say? I see someone has lifted their hand, but please, if you have a question or comment, drop your comment into the chat to write. I'll make sure. Look, participants, control meeting. I was trying to think. Yeah, and I have the settings where everyone can chat with me. So letter of recommendation and statement of purpose. I'll come back around to these things. And then standardized test scores, the GRE or the GMAT, these are sort of increasingly becoming optional for the master's degree. But I can tell you that for PhD, as far as I know, you should anticipate, at least in economics, having to take the GRE exam. And this is something that can require some planning according to your financial situation, or if you're in a lesser developed country, because these exams can be expensive. Like the last I knew, the GRE, when I took it, so this has been a number of years ago, was like $150 US dollars. I think that may have actually stayed about the same, but it is something that many people need to prepare for. And so academic qualifications matter, but not all grades are equal. And so this is something that even if your GPA is not as high in your earlier years or outside of your major, economics and math courses are what are most important. And so this is something that I see in particular. I look at as part of our admissions committee, what have students done in terms of intermediate microeconomics and macroeconomics? Have they had econometrics or statistics coursework? Have they taken calculus? Normally, I would think calculus 1 and 2, linear algebra. And if you're thinking about a PhD, you might consider, and I might recommend, taking or sitting in on a real analysis or a proof-based math course. And so, not always necessary for the real analysis class, but PhD programs will notice, and this is something that you could perhaps talk about, just in that, like I sat in, I've done a self-study, something like that, in a statement of purpose, right? How you prepared over time. And so aim for A's in the courses you can. If you haven't, it's not the end of the world, but in your statement of purpose, I would recommend talking about, like you can see my academic record. This is why now I think I can succeed in addressing that. Okay. I'm still seeing, still no questions, moving along. And so for us here at the, like our Master of Arts program at ODU, collegiate level courses and you just have to have calculus 1. And so this is going to be lesser, and this will be indicative of other master's programs in economics as well. We typically have less of an expectation for students who come in with mathematics, or the expectation for how much mathematics students have. And we are trying to get you all ready if you want to continue on to PhD, right? And so for us, it's like calculus 1, or at least one course in calculus, one course in statistics, not necessarily econometrics, and then either intermediate micro or macro. And then our typical minimum like our minimum for admission, you might think of as like an undergraduate GPA of 3 or higher. And we offer a GRE waiver if the cumulative GPA is 3.3 or higher. And so we can offer some, what would you say? Provisional admissions at times if those things aren't met. But we really like to see these things from our students as it helps ensure success uh, after they arrive and get into classes. Okay. And so I was just going to now I think many people are probably here. That is the link that I dropped into the chat again that will take you to my slides. Okay. And so here we are. Red line is away. Okay. So what do graduate programs want to see? Strong quantitative skills, right? And so this is not to say that writing ability isn't important because you need to be able to write, and you will be, with the statement of purpose, showing some of that with your application, but strong quantitative skills is really anticipated or it's wanted for economics. Comfort with models and theory, that would show up according to, what you've done in terms of your coursework. Exposure to empirical research. And so this is important for us, especially in our master's program. And I think many master's programs have done this. We have at ODU shifted toward more applied data analysis because we have like a 4-course sequence using econometrics and statistics. And so if students are familiar with that coming in, this is good. It's a signal that they'll probably be able to be successful with us. Intellectual curiosity and persistence. This is something I personally like when I'm reading statement of purposes, students who talk about research, what their purpose, why they think that a master's degree will help them reach their goals, those sorts of things. Okay. How can you enhance your transcript? And so for those of you who are with us, who are still in school, you might consider taking an extra mathematics or economics course, right? These are the courses that programs typically view as being the most important. But if you're not in school, and so this is a question that I receive fairly regularly. I have students who come, they've worked for a while, and they are considering a master's in economics. You might consider taking like a post-baccalaureate class. And so I know that outside of the United States, these courses are perhaps less easy to register for, just because in the United States, it's easier to take courses as a non-degree seeking student. But there are online courses as well that might be available. And so I have seen students in talking with students over time about how to look for certifications, perhaps Coursera. There are other web courses that you can audit that shows that you're continuing to work and you're trying to prepare for graduate school, but that perhaps it just wasn't for credit. Right. And so I do think that this is true. So like learning software, being able to talk about how you're continuing to work on learning Stata, R, or Python. And so in our program, we are using R. The 4-course sequence in econometrics focuses on R. And so prior knowledge of that, but I mean, students come to us with SPSS, knowledge of Excel, knowing how to use data and to utilize data is a universal skill. You're just changing the software. You might consider taking a statistics course with regression if you haven't already. And so with us, remember, you need to have at least had one statistics course, but certainly that sort of knowledge. Okay. There's value in research experience. This comes through in your statement of purpose as well, but you could talk about, or you could seek out, right, undergraduate research, right? So many of you may have undertaken a senior thesis. You may have served as a research assistant. I know many of you who are international students, this is expected. But honestly, just ask. I am always amazed. Um, I'm always excited, and I think many other professors are as well, when you have students or potential students who ask to help. Like, is there something you're working on? Is there some way I can help? And when or if you get that chance, outperform. Right. And so when you look for and or get this research experience, highlight it, right? So have this highlighted in your resume, have this written in your statement of purpose, and talk about, like, this research experience, I can show up and I can be a useful research assistant. That's one of the things that we hope for. That's a great case to be able to make, when you've got an application, because then you can say, hey, like, I've already done this. If you hire me as a research assistant at your university, I can come in and I can be productive right away. Especially for the PhD, this is important because sometimes you may be being brought in on a grant. And if you can point out, hey, I've done these things. Here's an example of my work. Here's an example of my writing. I think organizations get excited, or professors get excited about that. We had one of our recent graduates who got an assistantship at a good university. We were excited when they placed there. Um, he, excuse me, he had sent a writing sample, and it was a project that he had worked on, as part of his master's degree. And so an academic checklist. So if you were thinking about what do you need to complete, or what would be great if you were starting from your first day of undergraduate coursework, looking for these kinds of courses, right? So intermediate microeconomics or macroeconomics. I know many times we have economics majors, calculus 1 and 2, linear algebra. And so these three courses will be scattered throughout the coursework in the master's degree. Programming skills. Are you able to program, whether it be SPSS, Stata, R, Python? Artificial intelligence can help you in this in learning, and so you can do these things on your own, even if you weren't exposed as part of a course, and try to get as good a grades as you can. And so master's degree programs tend to be a little more forgiving about this, but shoot for a 3.5 or better GPA, when you can, if you still have courses left. If not, there are opportunities because you can still take the GRE. And so that is one big thing, right? So even if your grades were not as good as you might hope, if you take the GRE, and you can say, I've been taking coursework since I finished college, whether that be Coursera, some of these online certifications. And if you do very well on the GRE, I think your chances of getting support or funding or getting admitted go up, substantially. So how do you tell your story? So you'll be interacting with professors. I encourage you to contact and try to develop relationships with, program directors and or professors at schools that you think you're interested in, and think professional. And so emails with a salutation, always be polite and professional, and tell your story. Okay. So with a statement of purpose. So how can you be specific about your goals, research interests, and preparation? Right. So I want to do this because of this. I am prepared because of these things that have happened. Try to avoid being vague. This is something I'll admit I have problems with. Show why the program fits. And so program directors, decisions committees, admissions committees, assistantship committees understand that most most potential students will have applied at numerous universities, and you should, because you should want to try to maximize your likelihood of getting funding or getting into a good program. And that's okay, but you should personalize the materials that you're sending in. So show why the program fits you, that you've researched the program and what you will bring to it, right? So I'm going to add this. Talk about specific faculty. Like I get excited, other faculty members get excited about this. Like I see that this person's on staff, they're doing these kinds of projects. I would love to have a chance to work with them. It just shows that you are interested in specific things. And so, thank you. We've got our first question here. I have a question from Obi. Apologize about pronunciation. I'm less strong in math. I don't necessarily have real analysis or proof-based. What do you know about transitioning to a social policy PhD program and successfully getting admission? Do I have any advice? And so outside of economics, I have understood that perhaps real analysis is less of a requirement. And I don't necessarily think that real analysis is a stated requirement in many PhD programs, but it might help in some coursework like your first year. And so if you really, it's according to what you want your focus to be. So like your specialization in terms of a master's or a PhD. But outside of economics, and particularly if you are interested in social policy, public policy, I don't know that like real analysis or proof-based math is a requirement. I would just personally recommend why not start to reach out to some programs that you're interested in, like social policy, and see what the requirements are. I field emails like this regularly. It's like, here's my background, here's my transcript. How do I fit your program? Right. So for us, for a master's degree, that hurdle is often lower. Right. And so think about where you might want to be. And again, according to where you are, you might be able to take some courses along the way. Many universities, not only in the United States, but across the world, are actively searching for students. And so if you show up interested and prepared, I think there's a chance that many would consider working with you. Right. And so I've had conversations with some of the same students for 1 to 2 years now. I just finished my second year as program director. And hopefully it will work out. I mean, even if these students don't come to study with us at ODU, some are just interested in studying abroad, right? So when I talk to international students or domestic students as well, it's just part of the process. So thank you. And if I didn't quite answer that, please follow up in the chat. And so strong versus weak statement of purpose. And so this was just something that I wanted to show. So like I've always loved economics and I want to help people. Don't know, that seems fairly vague. But my thesis, my class project on agricultural subsidies in this region, it sparked interest in microeconomics and then evaluating impacts, right? And so like here, you've got a specific example of something that you've done. And you can point to it, right? And so if there's a situation where you have an interview, and so I do think that oftentimes when students request to talk to me, and I think that's part of being a program director, when students ask to speak with me, I try to do that. And you can prepare when you have the situation where you can show up, show that you know things about the program, that you've done some of your homework, those sorts of things. So let's see. So here's a question from Calvin. Is it possible to take a double program in MA and PhD? Was not less experience in economics as an undergraduate, but he wants to be versatile and venture into economics. So if you're coming from outside economics and you would like to study economics at the graduate level, so there is a perception inside economics So students that have strong math backgrounds can can pick up the theory in economics more easily than perhaps economics students who took economics but did not get the math. Um, so if you start a PhD program without a master's degree, what will often happen is you earn a master's degree along the way. Um, but if you want to to move into a PhD program in the long term, like academics is your long-term goal, you want to be an academic, like a professor, uh, probably that MA to PhD route is something you should at least consider, and you should compare programs. Like I mentioned, so just like a single calculus course at the graduate level, a single statistics course at the graduate level, and one intermediate macro or micro course for us is sufficient. And I think other programs are similar in that. Sometimes, according to where you are, according to what universities you have nearby, you may be able to take some of those courses. There may be online options as well. We're becoming a little bit more global in what is available online. Um, but you need to check with individual schools that those will suffice for prerequisites. Okay. I did get a question here from Obi again. So does our program admit students who already have master's degrees? Of course. So if like we are looking for students who we think can succeed through the master's degree in economics, um, and we have admitted students with master's degrees previously. I think there are actually like 2 or 3 students that are currently in the program that have master's degrees. One is in urban planning. Can't remember the other student that's in my mind what their master's degree is in. But thank you. It's a good question. And so, look, you think you'd like to change your direction? That is something that is possible. Oh yes, you're welcome, Calvin. And so, please, others, when you have questions, please feel free. Or if you'd like more clarification. And so, letters of recommendation. And so, this is something that's perhaps more important than realized for those of you who perhaps did not have grades as good that were as high as you might wish, or that you want to change the subject area. These can really make a difference when considerations for assistantships come to pass. And so you can think of like good letters that show that there's an understanding of the student. And so choose writers who know your strength. I do think that one of those, okay, if it's a PhD, I think definitely you should have someone who's an academic. For master's degree, I think that's less important. It can be someone who's just supervised you, and they can talk about whether you are professional, are you responsible, just talking about your working habits. But especially for PhD, it's good to have someone from an academic background. And this is something that when I have students ask me to write a letter, I always at least ask for a resume. Many times those students are at ODU, and so when that at my university, and so when that happens, I always look at their transcript as well. And so that lets me know. But if you're asking someone who does not have access to your grades, like at your prior university, I really recommend sending them your resume, sending them a transcript, sending them a draft of your statement of purpose, and also the schools that you plan to apply to. And in that, on some level, especially as an academic, that helps me give feedback on, well, this school, you should have a portfolio of schools that you're considering. That helps. And in my personal recommendation, if I was going to apply for a master's degree or a PhD, when I applied for PhD programs, I think I applied to 10 to 12 schools. It's been a while. I'd have to look at the list, but I think it's very common to recommend between 8 and 12 schools. and have a range where you might have some that you are pretty certain that you will get in. And then you have some schools that would be like a dream, right? So this is the place I would love to go. I'm not sure that they'll take me. And so you're hopefully going to end up with some options where you have more than one that has offered you funding. Okay. Okay. And so here we have a question. So there are two together from Sana. And so hopefully I said your name reasonably well. And so what about for third year students to apply? And so looking to complete studies in June of 2026 for a fall 26 start date. So, Sana, this is the perfect time. And this would be my recommendation. Now is a good time to be preparing for fall 26 start date. It would be possible. Many schools, some schools like master's degrees will allow students to come in the spring semester. And so like at ODU, we are still accepting international applications for spring starts. Domestic applications we can accept up very close to the start date because there's no trouble trying to get through the visa process. But for a fall 26 start date, you should anticipate due dates for applications to fall like in December of this year. And so some of those will be in January, sort of early February of 2026. But this is a perfect time to be making a list of schools that you might be interested in, talking to your current professors, right? So like where might they recommend? They know your background. Where do they think you might be able to be successful? Cultivating relationships with professors, like trying to get people ready to write you. And so that's a weird way to put it, but like thinking about who you think would write you a good letter and trying to cultivate a relationship with those people. And so I would recommend for a fall 2026 start applications, you should plan on writing in October, November, December, somewhere in there. And so later this fall, I can't remember what month, but if you look at the LinkedIn profile, I'm going to have another one of these events where I talk about the timeline and when to expect it. But let me drag this over for those of you who have not looked at the American Economic Association website before. And so just type in AEA, those letters, and then economics grad school. They have a application timeline. And this for the United States, but most other regions in the world would be pretty similar. This will get you an idea of when you should be preparing and when application things will come due. So right now, this summer, I would think practicing for the GRE, thinking about letters of recommendation coming into the fall. It's thinking about what schools you might want to apply to. And so actually what I'll do is I'll drop that into the chat, the main chat to everyone, just so everyone will have it. And so good question. Thank you. Is there any possibility for an application fee waiver to students with financial difficulty? And so this varies by different school. I recommend asking this. For some reason, this is not something I can do at ODU. I've asked about it, or it's just not the norm. But at other universities, I have heard about it. And so the application fees are something you will need to save for, especially if you plan on applying to multiple schools. But this is a big investment for those of you, whether you are in the United States or outside of the United States, because this is a big amount of time that you're going to be investing in the process. And it's a large amount of money as well. And so I encourage you to consider different schools. Okay. So please follow up if there's something I didn't quite get to. And so how can you add value? And so what kind of extras might boost your application? Um, and so many programs still value the GRE. And so if you're thinking about the PhD, you should be practicing and studying for the GRE, especially the quantitative portion. Personally, so when I was getting ready to apply to PhD programs, this has been a few years, but I don't think things have drastically changed based on my conversations and my experience now as a program director. Um, hmm, um, I personally studied for like a year. So I was working full time. But on the weekends, I would go to the local library and I would spend 3 or 4 hours practicing in my GRE workbook. It was not the most exciting thing to do, but it helped me. I did well enough personally that I got multiple offers for assistantships from more than one university. You should target, and I think these numbers are still valid, 160 plus for like a top MA program, right? And 165 plus for top PhD. You should prepare early. And so that means studying now, the next 3 to 5 months, if you're thinking about that fall 2026 start, uh, SANA, and plan on taking it in like October or November. Okay. Um, and you can also plan because some MA programs, it's not required if your grades are high enough. And so I would just recommend looking and seeing. Okay. Do you have work experience in policy, finance, or research? Right. Have you made presentations, conferences? Do you have published pieces? Do you have leadership roles in economics clubs? And so just can you talk about instances where you've used economics or you've talked about economics outside, right? So like how have you used your degree? What kind of experiences you had? Okay, a quick restatement of a question. Do we admit students who already have a master's degree in economics? We do. We do actually have I think at least one student, and we've had some students who've gone through the program and graduated, who previously had master's degrees from outside the United States. And so, of course, that would show that you have prior ability and you can make it through a program. So that would likely help you in your application and assistantship consideration. And so this is something that has gotten easier over time, and that is tailoring each application. So artificial intelligence, information on websites, it allows you to be able to personalize things. Your university in this town, these faculty members. What do you know about the program's strengths and culture? Read what the program's features are. And I recommend adjusting your statement of purpose, at least slightly for each program. With AI, this is relatively easy, but it should have your own voice. So I see a lot of these. It is rather obvious when students have taken things directly from AI, but I do think that AI can help you in cleaning up what you've written. Okay. And so pitfalls to avoid: weaker math preparation. So if you're relatively early in your undergraduate career and you still have options, don't shy away from math preparation. But vague or generic statement of purpose, this is something you can control later. If you don't get good recommendations or you choose a recommender that does not necessarily write a good letter for you, and some of that is also planning ahead in terms of time. And so if you are writing an application at the last minute, this can cause problems. Okay, so just planning. So as I mentioned, fall 2026, this is a good time to be planning and thinking about your list of schools. Spring 2026 is still possible. Our priority deadline for assistantship consideration is August 1st. which is still like 7 to 8 weeks away, but that's pretty soon. And so that can be quick for some of you, perhaps. Okay, so a question from Priscilla. Does the economics department accept transcript evaluation? I have evaluated my transcript and I want to know if I can add it to my application. And so from my understanding, talking to graduate admissions, so I have had questions from students. Do you have to use one of those for like a service to confirm your transcript and the grades? I know that some do that. As far as I know, if you, whatever university you went to across the world or domestic, um, the transcript as it is written is good enough. So I may have to follow up after the fact and ask for like descriptions of courses, which I've had to do before, which I've done before. But in terms of grade, your grade point average, the graduate school admissions translates that to our 4-point scale if you're not on a 4-point scale, and it allows for interpretation for me. But if you have had that done, Priscilla, if you have anything to update, I would say yes. So if there's additional information that you think would help a committee in terms of either, admission or assistantship consideration, it does not harm, it does not hurt to follow up, right? So why not? Again, and so this is some of that building a relationship with the program director or learning more about the program that you're considering. Okay. Good questions. And so actually, this is good. I see another couple questions coming in. This is where I was going to break for question and answer. And I was just going to say before I start answering the questions that I see here that have popped up. So if you want feedback on your profile or statement of purpose, maybe hang back after the session ends officially, and we could talk a little bit, or we can have an email conversation or maybe schedule a Zoom call, that sort of thing. And so with that said, I'll then move into the next question. So I do think, so Akambuni, I apologize if I said that in a manner that was not always the best. Native English speakers from the United States, we don't always say things very well outside. And so I pasted the Dropbox link for the slides again. If any of you would like to download those. So can you touch on funding and what percentage of tuition is normally waived for MA students, and how will students cover the remaining balance? And so I think that this is a valid question. So tuition covered by assistantship. So from my understanding, from my knowledge, assistantships will be different according to what university you're discussing. So at Old Dominion University, where I am, a graduate assistantship is $15,000 a year. $1,000 a year, $7,500 a semester. There is a tuition waiver from the international / out of state rate, which you can find on the website, which basically is a 61% tuition reduction. But students still have to pay the in-state rate. So from speaking with current students, international students, what normally works out is the stipend that comes with the master's degree, at least at ODU, covers the cost of attending school and like the ODU expenses. But it is not enough to cover all of your living expenses. And so there probably needs to be some source of funding, now whether that be personal savings or family savings or some way to help. Partially because regardless of whether you're at Old Dominion University or you're somewhere else, Students who are on assistantship, international students on assistantship, cannot work off campus during the normal academic school year. So that would be the fall semester and the spring semester. Um, and so therefore you could only get the $15,000 a year during the school year, but there is the capacity to work off campus during the summer. And then also there are jobs on campus during the summer. Um, this differs by university. So typically, by the way, PhD stipends are higher. And I would say the likelihood of getting like a full tuition waiver or a higher tuition waiver exists. From personal experience, some universities also, because health insurance is required for students who attend classes in the United States, I know at least one I could name in particular where student health insurance is paid by the university in addition to the stipend. And so this is why you should compare. My normal statement that I say when I talk to potential students is, I would love to see you on campus in Virginia, in Norfolk. But I understand that the most important thing for many of you is the the possibility of attending. So like if your goal is graduate school in economics, master's or PhD, you should be considering other universities as well. I think that we have a good program at ODU. I think we have good professors, but sometimes we might have assistantships some semesters. Sometimes other universities might have assistantships. Sometimes I might have more money to be able to offer, and sometimes I won't. And so it's just how this works. I would love to have funding for all of the students that are admitted who want it, but that's not not possible, at least not in the world that I inhabit as program director. But I am constantly looking. And so we're right at 12:48. We've got like 10 or so minutes left with my time that I have planned in case anyone who's here still has questions. I will give it a minute or two. I'll actually flash up. And so what I'll do, for those of you who have not followed the LinkedIn page, please consider doing so. I try to put numerous updates about applications, when due dates are coming, news about the department, information about students, alumni networking and updates. And so please do so. Please forward that to your friends if you know other people who might be interested. And feel free to contact me if you have questions after the fact as well, for those of you who are in attendance. And so I'll say that. So that gave it a minute or two. I will move on and say thank you. I'll give it a minute or two. This was the end of my planned information or my planned presentation. If there are any of you who would like to follow up or have further questions, so Akambuni, I follow you on LinkedIn. I have a statement of purpose and a CV. Can I send it to you for review? Feel free. Feel free if you would like some advice, if you would like to talk about your profile or that, please feel free. It is the summer. I am traveling on and off, but I will respond to you. I just may not be able to respond as quickly as during the school year, just because I may be moving around a bit. But please feel free if you'd like to send me something to review. Okay, with that said, let me think.